Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Training Tuesday offered by the Chief Procurement Office for General Services. All right, so today we are going to go over our updates and reminders, RFP evaluations, RFP evaluation tool template, additional training opportunities, and end things with our Explore More. Per CPO Notice 2025.09, FY25 Domestic Products Act compliance reports are due July 31st. Please refer to CPO Notice 2025.09 for more information. We just opened registration for several upcoming courses. Please make sure to check out our website for date and registration information. Okay, so you've opened your RFP at the designated due date and time. Let's cover what your next steps are. The agency's first step following the proposal opening is to complete a responsive and responsibility review. That review will include the following. Did the vendor submit a technical proposal? We are wanting to identify if they submitted their technical proposal and assure that they did not include any pricing information in their technical proposal. Did the vendor appropriately select pricing-related documents? If a vendor submitted a pricing-related document or put pricing in the alternate description, it will lead to them being deemed non-responsive. We can't have access to their pricing information prior to technical scores being finalized. Did the vendor submit financial disclosures? If the vendor submitted IPG active registered vendor disclosures, you'll need to review IPG to assure that they were registered on the due date. If they were not registered in IPG on the due date, they will need to be deemed non-responsive. Additionally, if they submitted vendor disclosures, they will need to be reviewed to assure all information was submitted correctly, including receiving all parent disclosures. The agency will also need to assure all subcontractor disclosures were submitted in addition to the prime and any parent disclosures. Does the vendor have an offset? The agency will need to review and follow CPO Notice 2023.05 if an offset is identified. Was BEP and/or VBP U-plan submitted if required? The U-plans will need to be submitted for review and approval of BEP. All documentation will need to be included with the procurement file. This includes BEP reviews, cure opportunities, etc. Please assure to submit the BEP documentation to BEP as soon as possible to assure that if a cure must be completed, it can be done prior to the evaluation team beginning to evaluate proposals. If the agency identifies a non-responsive or non-responsible vendor during this phase, the agency will need to complete the appropriate form and submit to the SPO for final determination. If the SPO concurs, the agency will notify the vendor in writing detailing why they are being deemed non-responsive or non-responsible. Please note that this will start the vendor's opportunity to protest the determination. The Procurement Rules 1.2015G outlines the evaluation of proposals. The rules under this section begin with the evaluation kickoff meeting requirement. Kickoff meetings are held to outline the requirements of the evaluation team and reminders of the confidentiality they must adhere to. This assures that all evaluators have the same understanding of their responsibilities of how to evaluate the proposals. When does the kickoff meeting occur? Well, the kickoff meeting should be scheduled after the agency and SPO agree on the responsiveness and responsibility check, and vendors have been notified as we just discussed. So who must attend? The APO or assigned buyer, all evaluators, technical and C2D, must both attend the kickoff meeting. And per rules, the SPO must be in attendance. A log of all attendees should be kept for the procurement file. Per CPO Notice 2019.09 requires all evaluators to complete the statement of compliance, confidentiality, and conflict of interest. These should have been completed prior to the solicitation being issued. However, if they were not or evaluators changed, these must be obtained prior to the kickoff meeting. Once the evaluators are made aware of who the responding vendors are, it requires evaluators to report any conflicts with the vendors that they would be evaluating. The agency should identify who the vendors are, who to contact if there are any questions during their evaluation, outline appropriate communications. For example, you can tell your manager that you're working on the evaluation, but you can't state anything more than that. The CPO's office has also produced a video that agencies may utilize at each kickoff meeting. If the video is not utilized, the APO and SPO must assure that all items addressed in the video are still addressed at all kickoff meetings. It is always best to emphasize that evaluators must provide detailed comments. Comments assist with supporting the scores provided, helps evaluators recall what they were looking at in the case of an outlier meeting, and provide insights for potential protests or debriefs. Comments should be unique and provide details as to why the score is being provided. The comments should be based on the proposal response and not on personal experiences or views. The comments should not be generic or repeat the same comments, especially if scores are different. The agency should set a timeline for evaluators to return their scores to the APO or buyer. The agency should base this turnaround time on the evaluators' schedules, number of proposals, and overall complexity of the RFP. After the kickoff meeting concludes, the APO or buyer may release the proposals and evaluation tool to the evaluation team. I suggest reiterating some of the main points that were covered in the evaluation kickoff meeting, not limited to: it has to be an individual evaluation, make sure to provide complete comments, who to send questions to if they arise, and that they should be returned only to the APO or lead buyer. So don't CC your other evaluation members. It may be best to send a separate email to each evaluator so that the accidental reply alls do not occur. Once the evaluators return their evaluations, the APO or lead buyer should review the submissions. Please check to assure that the comments support the scores. It should raise concern if the same comment is being used for a score of 2 out of 10 and 8 out of 10. After all comments are finalized, the agency creates a summary tool, identifies outliers, and submits the full package to the SPO. At this time, the SPO will additionally review comments. If there are any issues, the SPO may return for updates. If the agency and SPO agree that there are outliers, then an outlier meeting will be held. At the outlier meeting, the full evaluation team must be in attendance. By the full team, we do mean the portion of the team that was responsible for evaluating that section. Therefore, if all the outliers were on the technical proposal and none on the C2D scores and different evaluation teams were used for each, the agency would only need to bring together the team that needs to address outliers. At the outlier meeting, the evaluators will discuss the outliers and associated proposal. The SPO has the right to attend per 1.2015 G5. This does mean that the agency must alert and include the SPO in scheduling, and the APO or buyer will lead the meeting. Identify which proposals will be discussed and go through the outliers by vendor. It is highly important that the evaluators understand they are not to compare vendors' proposals to each other. I also prefer not to allow evaluators to say what they actually scored, but concentrate on what they did or didn't see. This assures that they are truly completing their evaluations independently as required by the code and rules. The evaluation team should utilize their detailed comments to address and support their conversation. At the end of the outlier meeting, note that the evaluators should be encouraged to review their evaluations again, but to iterate that they are not mandated to change their scores. The APO or buyer should provide a timeline to submit final evaluations. We suggest a quick turnaround since they are only addressing the outliers and you want the information and conversation to be fresh. If they do choose to change any of their scores, they must update their comments and should reference the outlier meeting. After all evaluators have confirmed their final scores, the summary tool will need to be updated and provided to the SPO for review. If there is a demonstration associated with the RFP, it would occur after this has occurred. The same process would be utilized after the demonstrations have been completed. Once technical, C2D, and demonstration evaluations have been finalized and the SPO has agreed that they are final, then the SPO will authorize the agency to open pricing. The agency purchaser, as identified on the General tab of the bid, will be the only person with the ability to open or unlock the pricing in bid buy. The purchaser may only do this after approval from the SPO has been received. If the purchaser opens pricing prior to SPO approval, it may damage the integrity of the procurement and result in cancellation of the RFP. After opening the pricing, the agency should assure that the vendors submitted pricing as required by the solicitation. If they did not, please notify your SPO to review appropriate action steps. If all pricing was submitted in accordance with the solicitation, the agency will be able to complete a best and final offer, or BAFO. The agency should draft a BAFO email that will be sent to all responsive and responsible vendors. The email should detail that the pricing has been opened and that the state agency is currently seeking BAFOs, how they can submit the BAFO, when it must be returned, and what happens if they do not submit BAFO pricing, which would result in us continuing to use the pricing that they submitted with their proposal initially. Per the rules 1.2015 H3, the primary objective of the BAFO is to maximize the state's ability to obtain best value based on the requirements and the evaluation factors set forth in the solicitation. We highly encourage the use of BAFOs. I've personally seen the state save thousands of dollars by taking a couple of days to ask for a BAFO. Once the BAFOs are completed, the agency includes the pricing scores into the summary scoring sheet and submits the bid tab with drafted NOA for approval and publication to the SPO. If you have additional questions regarding the processes covered today, please reach out to your SPO so that they can address procurement-specific questions with you. The Chief Procurement Office for General Services has created an evaluation tool template that agencies may use to create an evaluation tool. This tool is intended to be used to generate the evaluation tool that evaluators will utilize to score each response. This tool is published on the CPOGS website in the Procurement Resource Library. I have a short video that will walk you through how to use the evaluation tool template. This is the evaluation tool template. The buyer or APO will set up this sheet to distribute to the evaluators. Make sure to enable the workbook before proceeding. The project title needs to match the title in bid buy. And you'll also need to enter the bid buy number associated with the procurement. Next, we'll add a mandatory with evidence. For this instance, we are going to list 6 mandatories. It's asking us if we're sure that we want to add these 6, and we will say yes. The summary sheet now includes a tab for mandatories with evidence. We'll click that tab at the bottom of the sheet. Here we will enter in the description for each mandatory with evidence associated with the RFP. We will continue on down this list, entering in the description of the mandatories. You can add a mandatory by clicking on the Add Mandatory button. And you can also remove the last mandatory if needed by clicking on the Remove Last Mandatory. Additionally, if necessary, you can remove the entire section if you need. In this instance, we're not going to enter in the descriptions for all of these, but of course, in your real life RFP, you will go on to do that. Now we're going to go back to the main summary page so that you can add the desirable section. We're going to add training as a desirable. So here we'll select Add Desirables section, and then we'll enter in training. For our desirables, we are going to say we want 10 associated with training. All right, we're going to say yes to those 10 desirables. And now we'll see here on the bottom the training section. You'll now see that we've added a section for training. Currently, the max score is 0. We're going to go down here and click on the training tab and then fill out the descriptions. So we'll just say XYZ, and then we're going to do a max score of 50. I'm not going to fill out all of the descriptions. For example purposes, we'll just make the max scores on this page 50, and we won't be filling out those descriptions, but make sure you complete the descriptions in your real world RFPs. You can see here that for training, points add up to 500. Once you enter the max score, the breakdown of the score, excellent, good, fair, poor, and associated points will appear. The purple column is where the evaluators will enter the required comments that support their score. Now we're going to go back to the summary tab so we can add another desirable section. Here we are, we're going to click on this, and we're going to do implementation. And then select OK. And for this, we are going to have 2 desirables. And we'll say yes. Now we will select the implementation tab from the bottom of the page. We will enter in our max points as 100 and 75. Again, you would need to fill out this description in full, but for training purposes, we're just going to leave it at that. Now let's click back on the summary tab, and we can see here that our total technical score is 675. At this point, you will need to select the C2D tab and change the maximum technical score from the default of 500 to the actual maximum technical score for your RFP. In that case, that number is 675. So we're going to click on that tab. We're going to scroll down. We're going to see max technical score, default of 500. We're going to replace that with 675. We will now navigate back to the summary page and enter the maximum C2D points in the max cell. This point value will not automatically calculate, so you will need to calculate the max C2D points by multiplying the total technical score by 0.2. In this case, that will be 675 times 0.2, which gives us the maximum C2D score of 135. Once you are satisfied with your mandatories with evidence and your desirables sections, you'll need to select Finalize Scoring Tool. Once you select OK, all of the yellow cells will be locked so that the data cannot be manipulated. You can now distribute the evaluation tool to your evaluators. Now I'm going to complete this sheet from the perspective of an evaluator. As an evaluator, I will need to enter my name and the vendor name on the scoring sheet summary page. So I'll enter my name and I'll enter the vendor name. I'll then need to select the Mandatories with Evidence tab and fill it out accordingly. Comments are mandatory, and as a best practice, it's good to reference page numbers from the RFP in order to provide more context from your comments. So here I will select that this was met, and then I'll say on page 2, though you would want to be more specific in your comments. I'm just showing this as a training simulation. All right, so we're going to just go through and enter met on all of these. And again, we would put comments as they are required on all of the mandatories. Next, I'll go through both the training and implementation tabs and provide appropriate scoring and required comments. I'll make sure to look at the scoring category guidelines when issuing my scores. Okay, so here I'm going to do a score of 50, and then I'm going to do 40 down the line. Again, this is just for the training today. I'm not entering in all of the comments. We'll do 35 right here, and then we'll do 20. You would definitely want to put in these comments as they are required in order to support the score. And as I said, reflect back to a page number when appropriate. Now I'll click on the implementation section, and here I'll put in a score of 150. Okay. After completing those sections, I'll need to select the C2D scoring worksheet tab and then work through that sheet to properly provide the C2D score. Once you complete this worksheet, the score will automatically transfer to the C2D tab and calculate the actual C2D score. So here we'll enter in 5. We're just going to do all of these quickly. You would want to do the verification and work through this sheet diligently, but for training purposes today, I'm just going to kind of zoom through it so we can show you how this will calculate over. All right, now let's click on the C2D tab, and we will see here that we did get that actual score of 135. You'll then need to click on the summary tab and enter in that score into the C2D score cell. So here we'll enter in 135. You should now see that the final score for this vendor has been calculated. You will need to complete this process for each vendor. Okay, thanks so much, everybody. Please make sure to visit the CPOGS Training Center for more training opportunities. Our bid by system on-demand trainings are available on the CPOGS Training Center website 24/7, and the bid by registration form refers to CPO Notice 2025.04. This notice requires the requesting user to have completed the diversity and inclusion in procurement training prior to being able to gain access to bid by. In order to access the online on-demand training, please refer to CPO Notice 2025.04. The CPOGS Procurement Training Academy offers 5 courses that are approved by UPPCC for contact hours. Registration for these is required. Please visit our training center for all upcoming training dates, and as previously stated, we did recently open up several new dates, so make sure to go over there and take a look and get yourself registered. Now let's take a look at this week's Explore More. Pierre Marquette State Park, Illinois' largest state park, encompasses over 8,000 acres at the confluence of the Mississippi and Illinois rivers. It's renowned for its scenic views from the bluffs, especially vibrant fall foliage, and is a prime spot for winter bald eagle watching. The park offers diverse recreation including hiking, biking, horseback riding, fishing, and boating. Its centerpiece is the historic Pierre Marquette Lodge, built by the Civilian Conservation Corps, offering lodging, dining, and a massive stone fireplace. A visitor center provides insights into the park's rich history, geology, and wildlife. On a personal note, I love this park. I remember going there as a kid all the time. The lodge is super cool, and I recall them having fabulous ice cream. Give us a thumbs up if you've visited Pierre Marquette State Park. So if you have any questions, please send those over to the cpogs.training@illinois.gov email account, and we hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.